Good morning. I hereby call to order this 17th meeting of the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission for the year 2018. And as we stand for our Pledge of Allegiance, I ask that you continue to keep the family of our 41st President, President George Herbert Walker Bush, in your thoughts and prayers as we continue in mourning over his loss today. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As always, please note the safety instructions on the inside of the agenda if we need to leave this room for any type of emergency. So our first matter of this morning's agenda is the approval of the minutes for October 25th, and I call on Commissioner Coleman, who is the editor.
Thank you, Chairman. I've reviewed the minutes of the October 25th, 2018 public meeting, and I move to be approved as submitted.
You have heard the motion of Commissioner Coleman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Kennard. Any discussion, any further edits? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Now we will call upon our Secretary Rosemary Chiavetta, to lead us through today's agenda.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Your bureaus and offices have prepared the following agenda for your consideration. Therefore, let us begin on page 1. It is recommended by Director Monahan and the Bureau of Audits that the Commission adopt in an omnibus motion all of the energy and conservation audit reports appearing on page 1.
You have heard the motion. Is there a motion to adopt the staff recommendations?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Vice Chairman Place, second by Commissioner Coleman. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Turning to page 2, it is recommended by Director Bechtel and the Bureau of Consumer Services that the Commission adopt the proposed tentative order of the First Energy Company's proposed 2019-2021 Universal Service Plans.
Is there a motion to adopt staff recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Kennard, second by Commissioner Sweet. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Turning to page 3 and matters presented by Director Sophie and the Office of Special Assistance, it is recommended that the Commission adopt in an omnibus motion both items on page 3.
Is there a motion to adopt staff recommendations?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Sweet, second by Vice Chairman Place. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Turning to page 4, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the proposed opinion and order in the complaint of Clyde Wenger versus Source Power and Gas.
Is there a motion to call up the matter for consideration?
So moved.
Second.
Jump ball.
Chairman's choice.
Motion by Commissioner Coleman, second by Commissioner Kennard. Under discussion. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, I have a motion.
Commissioner Sweet.
Thank you. And before I begin, a personal observation, I was looking out at the audience and noticed that almost everybody was sitting on my side of the room. And I thought maybe I was finally, 2.5 years, I was getting through and my message was being heard. But then this more sober, realistic realization came to mind, which is it's much closer to the door.
Right, it's closer to the exit.
Okay. Once again, a massive ego is deflated. In any event, I do have a motion on the Wenger matter. And I ask that my motion be placed upon the record as if I had read it in its entirety. This matter comes to the Commission upon the exceptions of Source Power and Gas, LLC, filed to the initial decision issued in the complaint case filed by Clyde Wenger. The initial decision sustains the complaint, finding that Mr. Wenger was misled by an employee of an electric generation supplier which contracted to sell products offered by Source Power and Gas. Due to Source's appearance at the evidentiary hearing with a lawyer not licensed to practice law in Pennsylvania, Source was not permitted to participate in the hearing. However, Source did obtain licensed counsel afterwards and filed exceptions. In its exceptions, Source specifically agrees to terminate the contract signed by Mr. Wenger without early termination fees, which is precisely the remedy that Mr. Wenger sought in the matter. With this agreement, this dispute has been settled and the complaint has been satisfied. The satisfaction of the complaint eliminates the need for further analysis of the facts, as well as eliminating assessment of a civil penalty. Accordingly, I move that the ID be adopted, as initial decision, in relevant part and reversed in part, and that OSA prepare an opinion and order which approves and implements the terms of the satisfaction. Therefore, I move, number one, that the initial decision of Administrative Law Judge Elizabeth Barnes be adopted in part and reversed in part consistent with this motion. Secondly, that the Office of Special Assistance prepare an opinion and order consistent with this motion. Thank you.
You have heard the motion of Commissioner Sweet. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chairman Place. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. On the matter as amended, if there's no objection, we'll take the previous vote. Seeing no objection, the matter as amended passes 5-0.
It is recommended that the commission adopt the proposed opinion and order in the complaint of Otis Johnson versus the Philadelphia Gas Works.
Is there a motion to adopt staff recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coleman, second by Commissioner Kennard. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
It is recommended that the commission adopt the proposed opinion and order in the petition of the Pennsylvania American Water Company.
Is there a motion to call up the matter for consideration?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Kennard, second by Commissioner Sweet. Any discussion?
Chairman, I do have a joint motion on this matter.
Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you. I'd ask that our joint motion, my joint motion with Commissioner Kennard, be entered in the record as I read it in its entirety. Before the commission are exceptions and reply exceptions to the recommended decision of the Administrative Law Judge Elizabeth Barnes on May 15, 2018, recommending granting in part and denying in part the petition of Pennsylvania American Water Company. PAWC seeks a tariff revision to allow the replacement of customer-owned lead service pipes at the company's recoverable expense. Under its current tariff, PAWC owns and is responsible for the service lines from the water main to the curb stop, and the customer owns and is responsible for the service pipe from the curb stop to the premise. PAWC submitted this proposal to facilitate the replacement of customer-owned lead service pipes given the significant health and environmental impacts that can result from lead being introduced to the customer's drinking water. PAWC already has a program to replace company-owned lead lines, and it is the industry best practice to replace both company and customer-owned lead service lines and pipes as part of an overall lead line remediation program. In its petition, PAWC asked that it be allowed to capitalize the replacement costs associated with these service pipes and that the commission affirm that such replacement constitutes, quote, eligible property, end quote, to which it is entitled to recover return of and on its investment through the distribution service improvement charge. The Office of the Consumer Advocate, the Office of the Small Business Advocate, and the Commission's Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement participated in the proceeding and did not oppose the replacement of the customer-owned lead service pipes. However, they do disagree with the aspects of PAWC proposed accounting and cost recovery methodologies. Specifically, the OCA and INE opposed the capitalization of replacement cost and recommend that they be treated as a one-time expense and recovered through a deferred regulatory asset. The ALJ recommended that PAWC be allowed to amend its tariff and to replace customer-owned lead service pipes. However, the ALJ determined that PAWC should not be allowed to capitalize these expenses and thereby recover the costs through its base rates and DISC. Instead, it recommended the Commission adopt the OCA and INE proposal for accounting and cost recovery. In its exceptions, PAWC noted that the petition was voluntary and that the present service is compliant with the Environmental Protections Agency lead and copper rule. Additionally, PAWC alleged that it was at risk of not being properly compensated for the replacement work under the ALJ's recommendation. Because of these factors, PAWC stated that it would not implement the replacement program if the Commission adopted the ALJ's recommendations on accounting and cost recovery. After the filing of exceptions and reply exceptions, the Pennsylvania General Assembly passed legislation addressing the accounting and cost recovery questions at issue in this case. Relevantly, the new law provides that an investor-owned water utility may include the replacement of cost for customer-owned lead service lines in a rate base rather than replaced as part of the Commission's approved program. While Act 120 has yet not taken effect, the General Assembly had adopted a clear mandate for the accounting and cost recovery for expenses related to the replacement of customer-owned lead service pipes. We believe it is appropriate and expected that the program for our state's largest investor-owned water utility be reviewed under the provisions of Act 120. Accordingly, we will move that recommended decision be set aside and the case be remanded to the Office of the Administrative Law Judge for the express purpose of evaluating the PAWC petition under Act 120. The ALJ is directed to conduct such proceedings as may be necessary to supplement the record with evidence and legal arguments culminated in the recommended decision. In the alternative, if PAWC concludes that it would be more appropriate and efficient to file a revised petition at a new docket, they are free to propose the withdrawal of this petition. Therefore, we move that the recommended decision of the Administrative Law Judge Elizabeth Barnes be set aside and the matter be remanded to the Office of the Administrative Law Judge for further proceedings consistent with this joint motion, and that the Office of Special Assistants prepare an opinion in order consistent with this joint motion.
You have heard the joint motion of Commissioner Coleman and Commissioner Kennard. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Sweet. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. On the matter as amended.
Chairman, I apologize. I forgot I have a conflict statement. Phil Kirker of my team, who was an attorney with the Commission's Bureau of Investigation Enforcement and had worked on this case at that time. My conflict statement basically says that he did not advise me on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
And certainly, Madam Chairman, Rachel Maurer of my staff was a participant on behalf of I&E at the litigation stage, and I want to assure the parties that she did not participate in advising me in this matter, and I asked that my statement be entered into the record as if I had read it in its entirety as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion on the matter as amended? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Turning to page 5, it is recommended that the commission adopt the proposed order in the complaint of Christy McGriff versus the Duquesne Light Company.
Is there a motion to adopt the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Sweet, second by Commissioner Kennard. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
It is recommended that the commission adopt the proposed opinion and order in the proposed rate case of Columbia Gas of Pennsylvania.
Is there a motion to adopt the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Vice Chairman Place, second by Commissioner Kennard. Under discussion, I do have a statement for the record that I ask that it be spread upon the record in its entirety. Before the commission is the partial settlement of Columbia Gas's proposed rate increase, which proposes to maintain Columbia's existing weather normalization adjustment. I want to commend the parties for their commitment to maintain this mechanism. Much like other natural gas distribution companies in the state, Columbia's residential customers predominantly utilize distribution service for space heating. Such customers present a low load factor profile that is extremely sensitive to temperature, something which Columbia has no control over. The weather normalization adjustment works bidirectionally to insulate customers from high bills during the extremely cold months while also limiting the decline in revenue for Columbia during unseasonably warm heating months. This decoupling of uncontrollable weather from revenue stabilizes Columbia's cash flow and in turn allows Columbia to more acutely focus on the operational items within its control, namely the infrastructure upgrades and repairs. Further, since this decoupling mechanism does not apply to the natural gas commodity charge, incentives for efficient consumption are maintained. Weather normalization adjustments are not a novel concept, as Philadelphia Gas Works and others throughout the country also utilize different forms of this rate design. However, given the passage of Act 58 of 2018 on alternative rate making, I find it timely to highlight any support for this rate design concept. I further encourage other natural gas distribution companies in the Commonwealth to consider utilization of weather decoupling mechanisms. Any further discussion?
Madam Chairman, I'd like to state my full and complete concurrence in your statement, and even more broadly, we look forward to working with all the industry groups and all the various alternative forms of regulation that the legislature, the General Assembly, has authorized us to implement.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
It is recommended that the commission adopt in an omnibus motion the application of Mildred Transit Corporation at the bottom of page 5 and continuing to include the single item at the top of page 6, the joint petition of Windstream.
Is there a motion to adopt the staff recommendations?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Kennard, second by Commissioner Sweet. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Turning to page 7 and matters presented by Director Diskin and the Bureau of Technical Utility Services, it is recommended that the commission adopt in an omnibus motion all of the items on page 7, beginning with the petition of the Columbia Water Company, and continuing to include all of the items on page 8, all of the items on page 9, all of the items on page 10, and ending with the first item at the top of page 11, the application of Tri-Co connections.
Is there a motion to adopt the staff recommendations?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coleman, second by Commissioner Kennard. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
And finally, on page 11, it is recommended that the commission adopt the proposed order in the simplified rate-making plan of North Penn Telephone Company.
Is there a motion to adopt staff recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Kennard, second by Commissioner Coleman. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a statement on the matter.
Vice Chairman Place.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, I ask that my statement be entered into the record as if I had read it in its entirety. Before us for disposition is the North Penn Telephone Company Simplified Rate-Making Plan submission and the accompanying proposed revenue and rate increases. This proposed annual revenue increase amounts to approximately $155,000. I am aware of the challenges that are faced by North Penn and other similar small rural incumbent local exchange telephone companies with carrier of last resort obligations, including the effects of actions and decisions that have been and/or reached at the federal level. I believe that the requested annual revenue increase is appropriate. I observe that certain rate elements for basic residential and business local exchange service rates will be increased by a rather high percentage, for example, 8.69% to 20.54%. However, certain other services that essentially rely on the same network facilities of the companies may bear less of a proportionate burden. I would encourage the company to examine in the future a more proportionate allocation of its SRP revenue requirement. For these reasons, I will be respectfully concurring result only concerning the overall disposition of this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Place. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Concurring the result only.
The motion passes 5-0, noting that Vice Chairman Place is concurring in result only.
Turning to page 12 and matters presented by Chief Counsel Panque and the Law Bureau, it is recommended that the commission adopted in omnibus motion all of the items on page 12, beginning with the Pennsylvania Universal Service Fund and continuing to include both items on page 13, ending with the petition of the Metropolitan Edison Company.
Is there a motion to adopt the staff recommendations?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Vice Chairman Place, second by Commissioner Kennard. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Turning to page 14, and matters presented by Chief A.L.J. Rainey in the Office of Administrative Law Judge. It is recommended that the commission adopt in an omnibus motion all of the items on page 14, beginning with A.L.J. Pell's recommended decision in the complaint of the Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement versus Pico Energy Company, and continuing to conclude all items on page 15, ending with A.L.J. Johnson's initial decision in the complaint of Brackley Auto Works versus West Penn Power.
Is there a motion to adopt staff recommendations?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Kennard, second by Commissioner Coleman. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Turning to page 16, it should be noted that the application of Suez Water has been postponed to the public meeting of December 20th. Madam Chairman, that concludes the regular agenda. We now turn to the carry-in agenda. And on page 1 of the carry-in, it is recommended by the Law Bureau that the Commission ratify the ex parte emergency order issued by Commissioner Kennard on November 19th, 2018, granting the petition of the Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement regarding the Winola Water Company.
Is there a motion to adopt staff recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Motion by Vice Chairman Place, second by Commissioner Coleman. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Madam Chairman and Commissioners, that concludes all agenda items for consideration today.
If there's no further business to come before us and without objection, we are adjourned.